Hey there, everybody. I'm Lucas Martell. I'm the creator of Walkabout Mini Golf, and here we are at hole one of our brand new Journey to the Center of the Earth course. So let me give you a little tour. So this course has a little bit of history for me. So when I was a kid, I got really inspired by Myst and wanted to do an adventure game based on Journey to the Center of the Earth. So I learned Bryce 3D and I did a ton of just sort of like a pre-rendered screens, and I was learning how to sort of play around with that. I never came anywhere close to finishing it. I just had a couple of renders, but I didn't realize until after this course was almost done of just how far back that whole thing went. And now the fact that I finally got my Journey to the Center of the Earth world. It just happens to be a mini golf course, and we also got a chance to do the Myst course along with everyone at Cyan. So I only just realized like how all of those things from back when I was a teenager are just now finally kind of coming true. So with Journey to the Center of the Earth, we've done a few sort of like small caves, but we really decided that, okay, if we're doing this, we really need to make this spectacular and otherworldly and just really make this big and grand and lean into just that sort of like exploring a cave vibe. So, in addition to the visuals that we've got of just like really really sort of like taking it pretty far in terms of like designing these caves and these immense drops and everything, we kind of wanted gameplay to echo that. So one of the things, and I'm not actually able to, because we're in a different mode. One of the things that we have been, or that we really focused on for gameplay, was kind of giving the holes themselves this adventurous quality, this feeling like you are kind of spelunking. There's many holes like the one I'm flying over right now, hole 2, that kind of go off course and force you to do a little bit of off-roading, bouncing off of stalactites and downhills and hanging on over crevices. So that was sort of like the gameplay design was based on this this idea of basically rock climbing and cave exploring, and we hope that you kind of get a little bit of that feel as you're playing the course. So this was actually one of the ones that I got to get my hands in a design. I have kind of become the de facto sort of like rocks person. If there's a project that involves going into Gravity Sketch and just placing massive amounts of rocks, part of that is just because I really like doing it. It's kind of my zen state that I just get to build worlds like this. So it was very messy. And in fact, we have a Gravity Sketch. I basically recorded the entire process of building this course in Gravity Sketch. If it's not up yet, it should be coming up pretty soon, but it shows how, placing all these, building out these different caverns and everything actually worked within Gravity Sketch. But so this one was actually one of the I hadn't done any courses too much in a little while, but this was really, really fun to get back in. And like I mentioned with the, just my ties to Journey to the Center of the Earth, having always wanted to do it, it was great to finally get a chance to build some of those out. So this is hole 2, coming up to hole 3. One of the things that you'll see as we progress through is that this course also has a very, I guess, linear in a good way, I would say, kind of a linear quality to it, in that it starts off and it kind of progresses from room to room. So it really does feel like every time you enter into a new room, you're in a whole new place. The lighting changes, the look of where you're at changes quite a bit. So it really does give you this feel of progression in a way that it just really feels adventurous and big. And I don't know that I realized how big of a part that was of the design until we got a good ways into it. We ended up adding a couple little details and a couple of tweaks just to help emphasize that idea of progression. Oh, totally. Yeah. So with this course, we did try to loosely follow some of the scenes from the book. perhaps more so than we have with a few other courses. So there are many details that we kind of tried to drop in. At the same time, because we just aren't able to sort of like cover that massive amount of just geographic sort of like miles and miles. It is sort of condensed, but it does feel kind of like the theme park version of the events of the story. Many of some of the chambers that we'll come up to in a little bit are all straight from the book. We also tried to do, I guess there's not really in this cavern, but as we step into this one, I can point out a couple of other things. One of the features of the book was that they traveled to the center of the earth using these devices called Ruhmkorff coils, which are these electrically generated. I mean, this was, I forget when exactly the book was written. It was like 1880-ish, somewhere right around there. But so you'll see these throughout the level that are actually this early, had just been invented, I believe, at the time, these Ruhmkorff coils that were actually, you could crank them to generate an electrical light. That was state of the art in thereabouts the 1880s. I will also say this is not an ideal course if you are scared of heights. We've got a lot of big, steep vertical drops. It's something that we've talked about a little bit internally of whether we should try to avoid that at all, but I feel like we've gotten to the point that if you're with us and if you're playing a course that, we're 20-ish courses deep now, feels like, okay, you've probably got your VR legs at this point. And if you need to, there's always a place that you can stay back from the edge a little bit. So VR is great for getting over our fears of heights, if anything. All the way through this, kind of some other ideas of, I had mentioned the rock climbing and the off-roading idea. All of the holes in here are sort of built off this idea that you're kind of like hanging off of this edge of a cliff and sometimes having to do some kind of crazy curves around walls in order to just barely hang on by the skin of your teeth. Yep. I'm trying to think of other ones sort of throughout this. This is also one of the less picturesque spots. Have you been in this one, by the way, yet, or is this your first time launching in? Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Yep. So here we are coming up to hole 6. Another very fun off-roading, hanging on by the skin of your teeth hole. And yeah, I think probably one of the biggest design challenges of this course was just finding ways to make things feel somewhat natural while also fitting what we need for mini golf. And I do think that it took a while, but I think we finally found that good balance of like, okay, it feels like you're kind of like in an actual cave. This is actually one of my favorite little details of that right here, where you're just walking around this stalactite and you're kind of like, it feels like if I were really in a cave, I want to just like push off of this wall right here to keep myself from falling off of the edge a little bit. But we tried to drop in a few of those details just from being in actual, commercial caves and everything, trying to integrate those, while also making sure that you still have a walkable path for the ball and trying to make that feel as naturalistic as possible. So the design... Yeah, so this course is entirely environmental dependent. There's a lot of natural, probably more like Coyote Valley would probably be the closest one to that one, although it does change quite a bit in this course just in terms of how we're using that. Coyote Valley was a lot more controlled. This is a lot more off-road. Here we come to hole 8, which is in the crystal room. I believe that this was a very short section in the book. It was kind of mentioned in passing, but we really wanted to give you a change because we've been doing all of this sort of spelunking and, a lot of noisy waterfalls. It's so nice to kind of get into this crystal cave and just kind of get a change of color palette, a change of sound, and just really start to push out the feel of the environment that you're in here. So the first 7 holes are all through the kind of the upper caverns, and at the very end, we can pop out to God view because that overview of the course looks really, really cool. It's also so difficult to imagine where you're at because you're just constantly twisting and turning, and then when you see it from that overview, you suddenly see like how the whole thing is constructed in a really interesting way. So we spent a good bit of time in this room working on just the look of the crystals, trying to get that refractive, reflective quality while still staying low poly. And now we're coming up to, this was a bit of an invention, but this was actually this was actually kind of built off of a slightly new mechanic, something that we haven't seen yet. So this is the basalt sea caves that we're coming up to here. And this sort of 3-hole room was really designed with a few things in mind. We wanted to start giving people a glimpse into the Central Sea, which as you're flying through this, you'll start to see out into this massive cavern. But we also wanted to keep it somewhat contained so it didn't feel like you were out there yet, so that you're kind of getting teases. You're getting these little windows into that outer chamber. Also, just this basalt sea. This introduces a new mechanic that we haven't used before, which is actually that the water will sweep your ball away. So there's a couple of spots on all of these holes where you actually have to play through the waves. And if you get stuck in one of the waves, it will pull your ball off into the water. Yeah, so this was a fun one to figure out. Just how to do all of these waves and how to get it to actually interact, because it's one of those things that visually making it work isn't super, super challenging, but getting it to function properly for gameplay and even having to adjust the timing of the waves to make sure that we were giving people enough timing means that you're kind of, cheating how waves work just a little bit. I also want to just call out the lighting. Tony Davidson, our lead lighter, did an absolutely amazing job on this course. I'm trying to think if this was the second or the third course. I think this was one of the earlier ones that he had done, but this was the first one that was like totally him, and he was able to really, really get in and just sort of like completely change the look and feel just through all of the lighting that he did. It really transformed this into just a super magical place. So I'm crossing over hole 12 and coming out to hole 13, getting us finally out into the mushroom forest, which is a big, big feature in the book. And ultimately, I think that some of this stuff was why we wanted to do Journey to the Center of the Earth, and a lot of the Jules Verne stuff is that, even like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, like the Nautilus, the submarine, doing a mini golf course on a submarine is cool, but all of the details that come from the book just give it so much specificity, and if we were doing, a more realistic cave, it just wouldn't quite have this specificity in the sense of like, oh, we've got to do giant, enormous mushrooms. And so, yeah, the mushroom forest is a big, big feature of the book. This is another very, very fun off-roading hole where you actually have to play off the top of one of those mushrooms in order to stay on or avoid falling into the pit of, there must be a couple of thousand lost balls down there at the bottom of that pit. So the path actually comes over here to the right, and there's some steps that'll get you down to that. This one also, I would say that this course is also a little bit more circuitous, just in terms of that walkabout path, in terms of how you get from place to place. There's many spots where your ball is going over a cliff or going over a narrow ravine, and we kind of needed to make a way for you to also like actually traverse the course, whether you're in smooth locomotion or teleport. So, but yes, this is, I believe, hole 13. Another fun little moment as you're walking over the ladder. This is for all of the rock climbers out there, or any of the mountain climbers who are used to walking over ladders like that for to get over like glaciers, like on the approach to Everest and stuff. So, yeah, and so as I mentioned, gameplay on this one very organic, very natural. A lot of playing over kind of some abstract surfaces, having to go off-road a little bit, having to work around just the obstacles that are there. Really, kind of from a gameplay standpoint, kind of a 180 from Zerzura, which was very rectilinear, and this one being so organic really sort of like plays in a very different way. Very few bank shots, although there are a couple. But yeah. And here we come up to another big feature in the book, which was this dinosaur boneyard that they uncover. So like, oh, people have been wanting dinosaurs for a little while. This is a good step in that direction. I will, if you keep your eye out on the Central Sea, which is just starting to come out into view here, you might see there's a couple of pterodactyls and a couple of an ichthyosaurus and a plesiosaurus fighting, but I'm sure you'll catch little glimpses of them popping up above the water. But yeah, this boneyard was a big feature of the book, and again, that specificity just really makes the course. And after the first 9 holes of being a bit more normal cave-like experience, it feels really awesome. It just feels like there's such a progression in this course. Mm-hmm. And of course, we thought a lot about what we needed to do with the giant T-Rex skull, and was like, oh, you just have to putt to the mouth. It's like such a mini golf thing, but we were like, well, if it's a full life-size Tyrannosaur, then it makes it a little bit cooler than just the rinky-dink sort of what you'd run into on a real mini golf course. But yeah, and this is also another big course for us in terms of, from a design standpoint, thinking about perspective and thinking about sort of like gradually revealing those views. So the entire course is designed to give you little glimpses into these different things, and just finally being able to sort of like actually reach those destinations. So yeah, you catch little glimpses of the Central Sea. So in the book, they build a raft and set out across this Central Sea, and a pretty good portion of the book is actually them on the raft. Of course, you can't really mini golf on a raft super well. We couldn't do a whole lot of holes, and so we kind of condensed that down into 2 of the most iconic moments, which were setting out on the raft, and then finally reaching Geyser Island, which is hole 18 that I am heading out to right now. So I won't spoil what happens on hole 18 as you complete it, but it does make for a really nice finish. Right. So night mode was also very special. You're not going to see it in this video. That's also actually, though, perhaps good, because video does a hard time really conveying it. So in night mode, we actually turn out the lights and we give everybody flashlights. So night mode is actually played with flashlights. We did end up finding that it was more comfortable for everybody to create a little bit of light. So it's fairly dark, but you can still see without the flashlight. However, there are a couple of holes, especially the moment when you first load into night mode and it's completely black except for your flashlight. That only lasts for one hole, and then we start gradually introducing a little bit of bioluminescence and a couple of things to give you help your eyes adjust. But it really changes the experience because it forces you to kind of point in the right direction and use your putter as the flashlight as well in order to navigate around. And there was some really fun tech that went into all of that as well, because you can also see all of your... we do have options so that you can switch to a headlamp, which can help a little bit if people are having trouble with the moving flashlights. We also add the ability to turn off other people's flashlights if you'd prefer not to see other people playing, but I would not be surprised if some people invent some new mini games along with the flashlights, like flashlight tag or anything, because you can see everyone else's flashlights. And I will break away from that for just a second as we go up to the top of hole 18 on Geyser Island here. And then if you wouldn't mind following me up to God mode, I can step aside and give you a little overview of that. Oh, just a second, I'm wrapped up in my cable here. I am plugged in because I have been in my headset most of the day today. There we go. So, yeah, so God mode gives you a really nice sort of, like, we created this sort of anthill that actually gives you a glimpse into sort of like the actual path that you came down. One of the other cool things, I was just talking about night mode. One of my favorite things is when you're in God mode in night in the hard version, and you can actually see everyone's flashlights. It's actually hard to see them because they're so tiny, but you can see everyone's flashlights lighting up all of the different chambers in God mode. So video does a hard time capturing it, but just that sense of like, oh, I've got the flashlight in my hand is a really, really cool feeling. So I can't wait for everyone to check that out. And yeah, I just can't wait for people's reactions to seeing that, because it really adds something new to it.